Hey guys, it seems like every winter I go into some kind of hiking hibernation mode, and a big factor is of course the cold, uninviting weather and kind of the fear of getting stuck somewhere without the proper gear to keep me warm. Now I promised myself this year would be different, and I started researching the best tools to tackle that cold. So here's a review of the SPIII SPIII 3 and 4 winter sleeping bags. Let's see if they can turn my hibernation into winter sleep. Okay, I'm not gonna go over all the specs here, but it's good to know that these two are a part of a bigger lineup that SPIII makes with 5 different bags, each in 2 sizes ranging from a thin liner to the SPIII here, which is the warmest at an advertised temperature rating of down to -15 degrees Celsius. And what makes these special, because at least on paper they are pretty special, is the combination of warmth, weight, and compressibility. Well, that and the price, because that borders on bloody expensive. It's important to know, if you're just getting started looking at sleeping bags, that what you pay for here is really weight reduction. If you don't care about the weight of a sleeping bag, for example because you are into car camping, then for the love of your bank account, back away slowly. This is a specialty product for people who are focused on finding the lightest gear. But it's admittedly also a special product, and the best way to show you that is with this graph. These are some of the best-selling sleeping bags in Europe, each dot representing a weight and a comfort rating. Now, it's important to note that these ratings are not as standardized across brands as you might hope, and comfort is obviously a subjective thing. Nevertheless, I think you'll agree that statistically, the SPIII 3 and 4 are outliers in a good way. For example, if you know that you want to carry no more than 1 kilogram, the SPIII series will give you a fair amount of extra warmth for that weight. Or if you're set on, for example, a -15 degrees Celsius sleeping bag, it can save you quite a bit of weight. But given what we all know about lies, damn lies, and statistics, it's probably a good idea to put these to the test in some actual sub-zero temperatures. We went camping on the coldest day of the year here in Belgium, reaching about -7 degrees Celsius, that's about 18 degrees Fahrenheit. And though it was damn cold, we got lucky in a way, because -7 is very close to what SPIII claims to be the comfort rating for the SPIII 3, and that makes this an interesting test for anyone on the fence about whether to go for the SPIII 3 or the SPIII 4.
Hey, I just spent the night in the SPIII sleeping bag. A very cold night by Belgian standards, somewhere between -5 and -7 degrees Celsius. Probably near the limits where, given the choice between the SPIII and the SPIII, I would personally reach for the SPIII. I'm wearing a Wool Power 200 layer and an Icebreaker 600 Merino layer. And I had to get up in the middle of the night, put on my puffy, and I just kept it on for the second half of the night, and I did feel that was more comfortable.
Speaking about warmth, I should probably stress that while your sleeping bag is important, you want to keep in mind that about half the warmth actually comes from having a well-insulated sleeping mat. Some of that precious down is underneath you, yes, but because it's compressed by your body weight, it doesn't actually provide much warmth, because down, like other insulators, depends on its loft, its ability to trap air to keep you warm. As always, you shouldn't be paying too much attention to the lower and extreme limit ratings that are on the box, even though SPIII, like most other brands, uses these for marketing purposes. In reality, SPIII 3 is really a -2 degree bag, and the SPIII 4 is really a -5 degree bag. Add a couple of degrees for safety, and you're talking about a real world weather forecast scenario of 0 degree for the SPIII 3 and -5 for the SPIII 4. Could they be warmer? Yeah, sure they could. There could have been more of a seal around your neck. Some warmer models have a draft collar around your neck that you can close off separately from the hood, and that can be a bit cumbersome to get out of, but it certainly makes a difference. With the SPIII series, you get a single draw cord to cinch everything down around your face. And while it is nice that you can do it in a single movement, if you're like me, you're probably going to move around way too much for your face to stay perfectly inside that window. And so some cold is going to come in, and you're probably going to be happy if you got this SPIII that they included a neck muff. If you go into seriously frosty conditions though, you might wish that it was a bit more substantial. The zipper is always one of the weakest links for heat retention in a sleeping bag, and as Justin Outdoors pointed out in his excellent review, the draft tubes behind the zipper could do with a bit more volume. I haven't really had an issue with it myself, probably because the coldest nights that we had weren't very windy and because as a side sleeper I am on top of that zipper half of the time. However, I am not gonna make a fool of myself by disagreeing with a Canadian about cold weather. As I mentioned earlier, the big selling point of these SPIII bags is the exceptional warmth to weight ratio. And you might wonder, where does that actually come from? Where did Sea to Summit save weight in designing these, and did they just cut weight or did they also cut corners? This graph shows the weight distribution of a couple of popular sleeping bags in roughly the same weight class. And as you can see, there is a fair bit more down in the SPIII bags, meaning that they saved a lot of weight on other materials, specifically the fabric. And true enough, the outer fabric is very thin at 10 denier. It's see-through really, giving it a kind of marbled, vaguely tie-dyed look. I think this looks cool, my wife thinks it looks cheap. I guess we'll just have to disagree about the fact that I'm right. Anyway, the inside is even thinner at 7 denier, and that is a crazy thin weave. So these are some pretty advanced ultralight materials, and I'm sure they explain part of that price tag, but they also made me wonder about whether these are strong enough. Now, I don't feel qualified to say much about durability yet, since I haven't tested these in the context of a longer multi-day hike, but I will say online, very few complaints about the long-term durability of the fabrics in the user ratings and reviews about these bags so far. And that does correspond with my impressions. I have some lightweight gear, 10, 15 denier, that feels like if I wanted to, I could just tear a hole in it with my fingernails. These fabrics on the SPIII, even on the inside, don't really give me that impression. The down is RDS certified and it gets a hydrophobic treatment, meant to let it keep more loft in wet conditions. I'll just have to take their word for it, since that's kind of a tricky thing to test, but I can tell you that the DWR, that's the durable water repellent coating, on the outer shell works well enough. Here's a comparison with a non-DWR coated ice flame quilt and a Pertex Quantum Pro down jacket. The most controversial thing with the SPIII series seems to be the zipper. Some people feel that it's hard to open, especially when you're inside the bag. I haven't experienced this myself. The zipper is where I expect it to be. I can reach it, and getting out is just the usual Houdini routine that I expect in a sleeping bag. I mean, it's a hassle, but it's always a hassle. And so I was honestly ready to declare this a complete non-issue, but then my friend Philip tested the SPIII and had the exact same issue. He even ended up leaving the sleeping bag slightly unzipped and having a very cold night because of it, even though he had the SPIII, which is the warmer sleeping bag of the two. So my advice would be to test this in store if you can. I don't think that's too much to ask for such an expensive product. Just try it out right there. If you don't have an issue the first time, then I doubt it will be a problem for you. And if you do end up having a claustrophobic experience, at least the people in the store will be nearby to help you. Some people also complain about the fabric snagging between the zipper, and that's another issue that I didn't really have. The zipper guard seems to work for me, maybe just because my usual quilt is way worse in this regard, so maybe I've just learned to be careful. I don't know. Either way, it seems to be an issue for some people, and given the very thin fabric, I do understand that snagging is risky. It just worked as advertised for me personally. One thing I do like is a second slider on the zipper because it adds versatility by letting some air in when it's warmer. And you might argue that's not very useful in a winter bag, but I think it is. I think it matters because at prices like these, you want to get as much use out of your gear as possible, and you don't want to have to buy a different sleeping bag for every scenario. Versatility is why I like things like convertible quilts, and I do appreciate that extra bit of versatility here. In terms of shape, these are fairly standard mummy-sized sleeping bags. The SPIII and IV are a bit wider on the inside to allow you to put on some extra clothes. I personally like the fit. It will depend on your body type, of course, but for me it's wide enough to be comfortable and not so wide as to waste space. I've worn 3 layers in there, so base layer of fleece and a medium thickness down jacket without feeling too constrained. I'm admittedly not a very broad-shouldered guy, so your mileage may vary. It's also not too tapered around the feet, so that is nice. Throughout the SPIII series, you get the choice of a regular version and a long version. I got the regular version myself, even though I'm 185 centimeters, that's 6'1", but that's just because I usually sleep with my knees tucked in a little. If you're over 6 foot, 182 centimeters, especially if you sleep on your back, the long version is probably the way to go. Okay, if you're looking at the SPIII bags, what are some alternatives to consider? If I had infinite money and a very long winter to test, these 6 would be on my short list. If you live in the US, there are some additional companies like Feathered Friends and Griffin Gear that are worth looking into, but they don't really have a presence here in Europe, as far as I'm aware, and importing, in my experience, is a pain because of shipping, customs, and taxes. Anyway, these 6 or 7, with a spark included, are where I would start if I wanted a winter sleeping bag. You'll notice that none of these come cheap, and really that's okay. Your sleeping bag is one of your most important investments. If you treat it well, it will outlive both your backpack and your shelter. You have to be sure about the choices you make when you buy it though. You don't want to get in a situation where the first time you use it, you find out you don't really like winter camping, or you find out that you're more of a quilt guy. Make sure you know what you want, rent a winter bag, borrow one from a friend, find out what you like, sleep around before committing, you know you want to. In the end, after trying out both the SPIII and the SPIII, I decided to go for the SPIII. There are some potential downsides, like the smallish neck muff and the draft tubes, and yeah, not everybody likes the zipper, but I don't see too many bags on the market that are warmer for the same weight. At 880 grams, it's only 200 grams heavier than my summer quilt, and for that weight, it unlocks a whole new season and guarantees that I will be positively toasty in the shoulder season. Last year in Luxembourg, doing the Mullertal Trail, I got up at 3 in the morning to take a hot shower because I was just too cold to sleep. I am done with that. I'm keeping the spark.